All right, let's finish up our discussion of perfect competition. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the decision on when a firm should enter a market or stay in the market if they're already operating there, exit the market or stay out of it if you're not already operating, and then this idea of shutting down, okay? So entry into a market means coming in and competing. Exit from a market means leaving the market and going to do something else. Shutting down refers to this situation where you can't exit yet, you haven't moved on to doing something else, but you are going to shut down your operations right away. Okay, you're not going to continue operating and producing. So here are the rules that a firm should follow. First of all, they need to enter a market if there are economic profits to be had in that market. Because if there's economic profits for them in that market, that means they can earn more competing in that market than whatever else they're doing right now. Okay? This is going to hold true as long as the price in that market is greater than the average total cost in that market. If you can sell at a price per unit that's greater than the average total cost, including opportunity costs, in this market, then you're going to make an economic profit. Another way of writing that'll be useful here down the line is that the price needs to be greater than the sum of the average fixed costs plus the average variable costs. You need to be making enough per unit to cover both of these costs per unit and then have some left over. Okay? Second, exit if there are economic losses. That means either you're losing money by operating in this market, or at the very least, there's more money to be made doing something else in a different market. So exit if there are economic losses. In that case, that means you're leaving if the price is less than the average total cost per unit. Okay, or again, spelling this out, disaggregating average total cost. You want to exit if the price is less than the average fixed costs plus the average variable costs. All right. Finally, shut down, meaning maybe you can't exit yet because you have a, let's say, a long-term lease agreement that runs out, in another year or so. So you have these fixed costs of doing of producing, whether you produce anything or not. Okay. You want to shut down only if the economic losses in this market exceed whatever your fixed costs are. Okay, so let me first write down the rules and then kind of explain a little bit about why this rule makes sense. You want to shut down if the price that you can charge is less than your average variable costs. Okay, why would you want to do that? Well, if the price is less than your average total cost, but it's still greater than your average variable cost, what that means is you can cover all of these average variable costs and still have some money left over to cover some of your average fixed costs. All right. If you shut down and leave this market, if you shut down this market immediately, yes, you can eliminate your your variable costs right away. But your fixed costs, those stay with you, okay, for some amount of time. So if you have a lease agreement with a landlord that says you're going to pay them for the next 2 years, well, you can't get out of those fixed costs for the next 2 years. And so over that next 2 years, you should be ignoring those fixed costs and just thinking about whether or not you can cover those average variable costs per unit, okay? Now, when the 2 years are up and it's time that you could either renegotiate those fixed costs or get out of your lease and go do something else, that's when you'd start thinking about those fixed costs, because they're not fixed yet. You now get a chance to renegotiate them. But in the short run, while you have at least one fixed cost that you can't get out of, you ignore that and you think about your average variable costs. Okay, so if you're operating at a loss, you may want to still stay in that market for a while, as long as you can make more than your average variable cost per unit. But if you can't even do that, then the firm should be shutting down immediately and then exiting as soon as it can. This will hopefully make a little bit, be a little bit clearer looking at it in a couple of different graphs. So what I have here are three situations where you should either enter, exit, or shut down. On the y-axis, what I've got is dollar figures, okay? So the green bars here, these represent the price that you're able to sell at. And then these stacked bars that are red is your average variable cost, blue is your average fixed cost. They're stacked because if you add them together, altogether they're equal to your average total cost. Okay? So let's focus first of all here on the entry situation on the far left. You can see that the price per unit, the marginal revenue that you would earn in this market is $12 per unit. Now, if you look at your average total cost, you can see that that is a total of $10 per unit. You got a $5 average variable cost, another $5 average fixed cost. So together, the average total cost is $10. Well, that's a pretty good deal, right? You can earn $2 per unit more than your average total costs. And so you would be making profits equal to this area right here, right? And the price that's above your average total cost. So if this is the situation in the market, you should enter it if you're not already in it. And if you're already operating in that market, then obviously you want to stay in and keep earning those economic profits. Okay, so that should be pretty straightforward. Over here, you've got exit. Okay, you want to leave as soon as you can. And that is going to be a situation where the price has now fallen to, in this case, $8. It's below the average total cost. So you're going to want to get out of this market as soon as you can, all right? But you don't want to shut down production right away. And the reason for that is this price is less than your average total cost, so you're making economic losses. But notice that if you ignore your average fixed costs, okay, if you put those to the side, notice that the price per unit is still more than your average variable cost, all right? And also notice that you can't escape these fixed costs until your contracts come up for renegotiation. So as long as that's the case, you should be ignoring this, and you notice that, okay, the price is above my average variable cost, so I don't want to shut down right away. I want to keep operating. But as soon as I can get out of my fixed costs, as soon as I can, get out of my lease, or as soon as I've made my last interest payment to the bank, whatever that is, then that's when you want to exit the market. Okay, once these average fixed costs can be escaped, that's when you would want to exit. But you still keep operating in the short run. Over here, you've got the case where you want to shut down immediately. In this case, notice that the price has fallen down to $3. That is less than your average variable costs. In this case, even when we ignore the average fixed costs, the price that you're making per unit is less than the average variable cost. It's less than the extra amount it costs you per unit to produce. Okay? So in this case, your economic losses are this entire area up here, everything above the price up to the average total cost per unit. That's if you keep operating in this market. But if you shut down, then you can eliminate these average variable costs. You'll be getting rid of the price that you're earning as well, but you'll be left with just your average fixed costs, and that is a smaller loss that you're facing than if you keep producing and you face all of those costs. Another way of thinking about that is you can get rid of $5 of cost per unit by also getting rid of $3 of price per unit. And since your costs are falling by more than your price, it makes sense to just shut down right away and then exit the market as soon as your fixed costs can be eliminated or gotten out of. And the last thing that I want to show you is the same idea, but going back to our graphs of average total and average variable costs and marginal cost. So in this situation, on this graph, you can basically split this into cases where the price per unit is above average total cost, when it's between average and average total and average variable cost, and when it is below. So where would those be? If we take our ruler and we find the minimum of the average total cost curve, and we draw a straight line, call that price P1. As long as the marginal revenue curve, as long as the price is above P1, it's going to be intersecting this marginal cost curve somewhere in this region, okay? As long as that is the case, it's going to be true that your price per unit is greater than or equal to your average total cost. So with this marginal revenue curve, you would want to enter. Right, now I'm going to draw a green line alongside the marginal cost curve to highlight it. This, by the way, is based on a graph that they give you in the textbook. I don't remember exactly the page number, but it's somewhere around like page 210, I believe. Okay, so as long as the price is above the minimum of the average total cost curve, then this is a case where firms want to enter the market, or if they're already operating in the market, they want to stay in. Then you've got this second cutoff price that's right there at the minimum of the average variable cost curve. If the price falls in this range, you're going to want to exit. But you don't want to exit immediately. You don't want to shut down operations immediately because you still have those fixed costs. Okay? Now, as long as the price is along this region of the marginal cost curve, notice that, remember, the distance between average total cost and average variable cost is your average fixed cost. So as long as the price is above average variable cost, you're earning enough to cover those variable costs plus a little extra to pay off some of your fixed costs, okay, to cushion you against some of those fixed costs. So as long as the price is in this region, you're still making enough to want to keep operating in the short run until you can get out of your fixed costs. All right. In that case, you're cutting your losses by continuing to operate. But once the price falls below this marginal revenue curve here, this MR2, now you're in a region of the marginal cost curve where you would want to shut down. You'd want to shut down immediately because the price is so low that you not only are you not covering all of your average fixed costs, you can't even cover the extra cost of hiring workers and buying your raw materials and that sort of thing. So if the price falls below this point, the minimum of the average variable cost curve, then you don't even wait to exit. You shut down immediately and then you exit once you can get out of your fixed costs. All right, so that is it for the perfectly competitive model, guys. I understand this particular lecture is probably the most, complicated and maybe a bit dry. So thank you for sticking with me through it. As always, be flexible, communicate, and stay awesome.